So I have a network that is feeding the entire world. The entire world could be space, could be a dipole antenna, could be anything.
And what is NS?
The N, sorry. The N is, forget it, just the normal to this space.
Okay.
And the S is the surface of this space.
Okay.
So just for those who love mathematics. Sure. So here, we don't need to focus too much about this, but there is a relationship between the entire space, parameters, power, and the input impedance. The R can be described by the field in this space, the electric field, magnetic energy, electric energy, and the volume. So just only I want to show here is that the entire space can be characterized. If you are very limited from your own perspective, you look into space, you find R and X.
Right. So the whole universe is just an impedance now.
It's the whole, very nice. I like that.
Out of phase.
And what I highlighted, actually, to show that this imbalance between the electric energy and the magnetic energy. And I have my own controversial thoughts that I will not share much with you. I don't believe there's such thing as electric energy or magnetic energy.
This is on, so if you wish me to,
I was too late.
if you want me to turn it off, just say turn it off.
No, it's all right.
No.
It's okay.
Can you finish the sentence for me, please?
Your controversial thoughts that will get you in trouble with the world are?
Is that I don't believe that when you talk about the radiation phenomenon, there's no such thing as electric energy versus magnetic energy. There is both electromagnetic energy.
Okay.
And when we divided it into this classification, that was the legacy coming from circuits. Circuits, you have energy oscillating between an inductor and a capacitor. If you have a radiation phenomena, you cannot say the energy is going into electrical mode versus...
This is how things become dangerous when you're a patient with an implanted device. It's because people choose one side or the other, and they ignore the other. They ignore the reality of the world.
I think that, I hope that you will find in my talk a purpose.
Yeah. I'm hearing this.
Exactly.
I'm hearing it.
In other words, not just to show that I know this or I know that and you don't know. No. I think that I'm trying to look at things differently because this field, in my opinion, is what changed the way the world works right now. And it's just the beginning. Next, please. So to have radiation, do I need to talk about antennas? Next, please. Bandwidth matching gain. These are things that we mentioned when we talk about antennas. The bandwidth of the antenna, there could be many bandwidth, the impedance bandwidth. Is it matched? What's the gain? Next, please. So with a very small loop radiate, this is very interesting. Okay, I asked that question, a very, very small loop. Okay, now those who are ham operators or who did a lot of work on astronomy, they use loops, electrically small. What do you mean by electrically small? The dimensions is much smaller than the wavelength. But I have that power here. I was prepared.
You need the power cord?
Yeah, here it is. If you don't want to pass. Actually, sorry.
There's some electromagnetic needs over there.
Yeah.
I like your tripod there.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Is this working?
Yeah, this is going to be good. You're going to like it. I sent you a link. Download it over Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Somebody else's.
Okay.
Okay, so if we look at small, we noticed that we did use small loops, but not as transmitters. We use them as receivers. Am I right?
Can't use it.
What's that?
Because you can't use them as
Aha. So which means that we need to revisit reciprocity, the concept of reciprocity. So not everything is reciprocal or symmetric. This is very important. Next, please. So here is an example where I look for the input or the reflection coefficient, the S11, of a small loop. I can design a small loop. I will not tell you how. You have to pay me a lot. No, I'm joking. Yeah.
You have to get out that Amazon card and increase the value of it.
I don't drink, unfortunately, or fortunately. So my point here is that I designed this antenna, a small loop, such that all the power, most of the power that goes into it is radiating. So that will make ham operators rethink whether they can use a loop antenna as a transmitter. Now, where are these used, these small loop antennas? MRI coils. This is exactly many MRI coils. What is the fact? This work came, we did some work on MRI. This came from it. You see 125 meg.
Yeah.
125 meg, what's the wavelength? 3 meters approximately. 3 meters, like from here to there. And what is the size of these loops inside the MRI coil? This. So this is so it's working. Why? Next.
And outside the so that you have the 5 gas lines that's very close to the device.
That's one I can understand. So what does minus 20 dB with? What is next?
You okay?
Yeah. So I'm still asking questions. Would a coaxial line radiate? Who would say it radiates?
Of course. Yeah, I would.
Okay, EMC engineer, right? Cannot fool you.
Yeah, depends what you do with it. And they show it.
You
Talk
would
about, I'm talking, I asked
that
him very quick.
clever black thing on the outside sort of gives you a clue too,
It's not efficient.
right?
Well, if you talk to antenna folk, what we learned it in the textbook. It's a coaxial line.
Big antenna.
But of course, people use it to interrogate material, to characterize material. Next, please. So here, what I designed, I show you the cross section of a new design that we came up with. Please ignore the very bottom. It says EEC termination. Ignore that. I put an exotic material, which is called metamaterial. Yeah, and this is a cross section, and I found that that most of the energy that I'm pumping into this transmission line is completely absorbed. So I created EEC power, really powerful transmission line. Next, please. And I want to show you the S11. Look at the S11, the green one. It's minus what? Minus 27 dB. So is it radiating? Not quite. All the energy is burned in this addition that I came with. Is that you see the redness? It's an exotic kind of material that all the energy is sucked into it, but there's no radiation. Next, please. So dipole antennas. Okay. On the left-hand side, we have a resonant antenna, lambda over 2. You know, R.W.P. King at Harvard spent what? Doing dipole antennas. I don't know if that's the secret to his longevity. He died at the age of what, 100?
Yeah, around 100, yeah.
I saw him just a very one-line funny story. We saw him at the age of 80, and the rumors was in the conference he married a young chick.
Does that keep you alive?
I'm not going there, please. I'm not going there. You know,
Yeah.
when they get together, they joke.
It's like
And
different.
she was 76. Okay. And
4 years younger.
Yes.
Okay.
So this resonant antenna on the left-hand side is the so-called resonant antenna, and then on the right-hand side you have an antenna which is much smaller than lambda over 2. So let's say at 1 gig, that's what, 15 centimeter, and this is, let's say, 2 centimeter. Which one radiates more?
The little one?
The little one?
Because you're getting closer to it and it's got the same transmission line?
The classic discussion is that the lambda over 2. You design the lambda over 2. Now, the real answer, it depends on the feed transmission line impedance. So, bottom line, let's not talk about impedance and magnitude. More current, more radiation. End of story. So I can have the one on the right hand side radiate more. So not necessarily the lambda over 2. Next. So
My dimmer switch in the dining room.
next, please. It's okay. This is an animation that sometimes. Okay. So going back to the invincible, I call it, microstrip patch antenna, is that how right now, if we understand this simple thing that current radiates, voltage doesn't radiate, right? You buy a battery from Home Depot, it doesn't radiate. It has a 5 volt, right? Why this radiates? Now, we said that the current radiates. Great. So we need to look at the current. That's it. We need to look at the current. Next, please. So this is a perspective view. Okay, this is a perspective view. They told us that it has to be lambda over 2. And I hope you follow with me what is this, what I'm looking. I'm showing you a substrate and I'm showing you the patch on top. Now, what we were told in a very, very elegant way, if you look at the book of Balanis, very elegant, intimidating, this cavity-backed model. There's they use the theory of equivalence theory, which is taught in graduate level courses. Okay, they use that to explain to the commoner how does this antenna work. It's really confusing. So next, please. So they use next, please. Next. Okay. So we come up in that mathematical theory with something called the magnetic current. And if the separation between them is lambda over 2, then these magnetic currents, not electric currents. Now, what in the world is a magnetic current? God knows. I don't think he knows because there's no such thing as magnetic current.
But if he had a
I'm not
girl
being
in the neighborhood,
What's that?
if he had a girl in the neighborhood, they might figure it out together.
So there's a magnetic current and there's a magnetic current, and this mathematical construction, they are in the same direction. And I show you a cross section underneath. See the dots?
Yeah.
Black dot, black dot. Next, please. Next. Okay. So I show you the same schematic from the previous slide above. Underneath, now we have a magnetic current and the magnetic current, and that magnetic current is related to the electric field. If you're not aware of the concept of equivalence theory, bear with me, you'll appreciate why I'm showing you. Because this is what was used to show us how it radiates. Math doesn't show me how things radiate. Physics show me how things radiate. So, if I have a magnetic current like that, according to the image theory right now, we're going to go to the image theory, there's an image underneath. But if it's a magnetic current, it's in the same direction, not the opposite. If you have an electric current, its image is in the opposite. Magnetic current, its image in the same direction. Now you end up with what? 4 black dots. Which means that right now I have a lot of radiation. Here goes the theory. That's how they explain it. Now, I was never really impressed by that. Next, and I hope you will not. I say here it's just a model. It's just a model. Next. Now let's look at the physics. You see right now, please, yeah, that's it. Right now with the you leaving?
I'm sorry,
Thank you. No. Thank you.
Why not?
So if we look at the physics, so this can be done by any code available nowadays. And unfortunately, the students don't appreciate the power of these tools. I call them virtual labs, right? We think design, use it for design, but they're really virtual labs. Imagine, you can see the current everywhere. So if we do that, if we design it, and we look at the edges of this patch, we find a lot of redness on the edge, a lot of redness. So if you were to take a cross section, and if you take a cross section in the cross direction here, you will find that the current goes extremely high and goes down and then extremely high. So this interesting, it's not our purpose today, it's not the microstrip patch antenna, but it's transmission lines follow similar path. So this is the antenna. You have a lot of currents here, a lot of currents here. Okay? Now, this current is close to a ground plane. So we know that if you have a high current next to a ground plane, it will have an image. Next, please. Oh, this is just plotting the curves. Next. Sorry, the E field. Next. Next. Okay. Now we're getting closer to the physics. Electrons moving is physics. Electron moving is physics. Now, this electron moving on top will have an image in the bottom. However, we have a dielectric between the two. Image theory didn't tell us that there's a dielectric between the current and the ground plane. Look very carefully. Image theory didn't. There's a current and there's an image if there's nothing but a ground plane. Right now we have a current, dielectric, and a ground plane. One more thing. The current is on copper. The textbook teach us image theory with current by itself. The current that they use only in physics labs. But now we have a current next to a wire, so supported by a wire. So there will be an image. You see that? The red is the original current on both sides, but the green is its image. But its image is not equal to it. That's the key. The image is not equal to it. Next, please. I put a delta between. So let's assume that the current on top is A magnitude with some phase, e to the j beta y. Just, theoretically. Let's look at the bottom. Next, please. The amplitude is different. The amplitude phase is different. Now, the way I look at it is that if you have $1 million and you have its image, but not quite, what's the image? Maybe 5% less. So what's 5% of $1 million? 50,000? It's a lot of money. A lot of money. So if you have if you have $1 billion, if you have $1 billion, the absolute value of that difference of its image, which is not exact, goes up, the absolute value, just like in frequency. But what matters, radiation is absolute, is not relative. EEC engineers know that very well. Radiation is absolute, not relative. So the difference between them, if the top current is extremely high, will give me sufficient difference to give me net radiation, which is significant. Now, what causes that current to be so high in the edges? That came empirically. You play with it, you feed it. Remember, the feed is, we know that, the feed is not trivial.
Do you measure the phase difference when you're dealing with physical devices that you design? Like in order
Of course. But you see, the interesting thing is that I studied, I designed actually microchip patch antennas, just designed with Professor Y.T. Lowe, a genius in this field. And he says, go there, try it, feed here, feed along this cut. Why? Why should I feed along this cut? It's not that it's absurd science. No, there's a reason, but we do not know it yet. There's a reason why we feed along a certain space. But this actually tells you exactly why it radiates. Actually, a very, very just one-line story. We had Professor Ingata.
Is this your equation or is this an equation we can find in the
No, this is mine. So Professor Ingata, as a luminary in the field, he's at the University of Pennsylvania. He invited him to be an external examiner on one of the PhD students, and we were sitting like this, and the students were up there. And I said Layla, her name, who's the one I talked about at the University of Tehran right now. I said Layla because, before students graduate, you better ask them. Once they graduate, they will never answer any questions.
They don't have to.
They don't have to. I know. I told that to my supervisor one day. He didn't like it. So I said, Layla, can you tell us why the microstrip patch antenna, how it radiates? And I did not explain this to her. I remember Professor Ingata was sitting on the other side. He looked at me like this. He said, Omar, let's not go that way. Let's not go that route, please. So a luminary like him, they're not approaching this because they're just deeply interested in models and mathematics. And that does not explain to us the physics. Next, please.
So that way lies madness and they know it.
I'm sorry?
That way lies madness and they know it.
Well,
And they don't have to rely on it in order to get their math degree.
yes. So the bottom line, again, electrons moving on copper causes radiation. And that seems to be a very simple statement. Next. So these are like a hierarchy, power If there's no power, there's no radiation. Period. Don't jump, don't do anything. There's no power, there's no radiation. Matching is another interesting thing, and matching I don't think is well understood. Matching, we know it as a transformer, and I think that transformer is the best way to explain matching. I'm not going to play games, I'm just going to convert high voltage to low voltage, low current to high current. What else can I do? What else? There's not much I can do. Next, and then the radiation. Of course.
There's laws.
Of course, of course, of course. So if we look at a transmission line like this, there's a ground plane, there's termination, and there's a source. Will this radiate? Of course. This group know that it will radiate. Okay? But it matters how the transmission line is built, based on the so-called edge phenomenon. This edge phenomenon is not well understood. We know it, we use it, we look at books, they say watch out. Next, please. So I'm going to skip this because of time, but basically I have several slides here to show you, we all know this, that how you feed and where to feed, a simple transmission line, it can radiate a lot actually. Its proximity to the edge matter, right? All of these things are empirical, all of them, but they're based on the current. You know, if